Absolutely.
The
European Union has treated us so terribly.
You promised Americans to try to reduce costs, and so many of the products that would be tariffed, when they come into the country, the outgoing country is not paying the tariff. The buyers in the United States pay that, and then that's passed on to consumers in most instances.
Sometimes.
How would you expect to have prices come down if you have such a broad plan for tariffs? And what do you say to the voters who want to see you reduce everyday costs?
There could be some temporary short-term disruption.
We're at a critical moment. President Trump stated yesterday he is still committed to placing tariffs on Canada starting as early as tomorrow, possibly. Now, we don't know precisely what that could look like, but I do know two things. First, if the president does choose to implement any tariffs against Canada, we're ready with a response.
Well, in case you missed it, Trump voters, here's the cliff notes from Trump's most diabolical presser. No, he won't bring down the price of goods on day one, which he promised. I mean, we're almost into week 3 and egg prices are skyrocketing.
Eggs, when Kamala Harris took office, were short of $1.50 a dozen. Now a dozen eggs will cost you around $4 thanks to Kamala Harris's inflationary policies. We can do so much better. We certainly will.
Egg prices across the region continue to go up. Experts aren't seeing any relief in sight.
Egg prices are estimated to increase about 20% more this year.
And on top of the impending trade war with China, Mexico, and Canada, I want you to know this about whether he'll implement tariffs on Europe.
Am I going to impose tariffs on the European Union? Do you want the truthful answer, or should I give you a political answer? Absolutely. Absolutely. The European Union has treated us so terribly.
Well, with week 2 in the books, it has never been more apparent how gross a mistake this country has made. I mean, again, from his response to the tragic plane crash that claimed the lives of 67 people in D.C., opting to continue his evidenceless claims that DEI was to blame.
On the crash, do you have any concerns that your commentary about things you have described as common sense or your observations could in any way interfere with the thorough investigation of the crash?
No, I think they'll do an investigation. It'll probably come out the way I said it. I like to put it up front. I'm so tired of listening to things happen to our country and then people say we'll do an investigation and 3 years later they come out with a report that nobody looks at. Especially, not in all cases can you do that, but in this case, you had a helicopter that was, the Black Hawk was too high. It was above the 200 limit by double. Shouldn't have been there. And there were some other mistakes made too, and I pointed them out also, and I was right on all of it. But they'll still do an investigation just to check it out. But I think that's
Commander-in-Chief, are you at
while of course ignoring the fact that many of these policies were implemented while he was president the first time around.
We all agree on that. But when Jesse says that President Trump is offering constructive criticism, it is not constructive criticism to say this is Joe Biden's fault or this is Pete Buttigieg's fault.
Why not?
Because that's just blaming your political adversary. It's not taking any responsibility.
It's blaming the guy
not
who was
sharing
there
the risk.
before.
Who
right,
had
but
the
you know what? Actually, the nifty part about being the 45th and 47th president is you were also the guy before. And Greg is right. These policies were in place under Trump. I went to try to find out about your dwarf recruitment.
Yes.
And that existed under the Trump administration.
A dwarf quota?
Yes, actually. It's up from June 2017 to June 2021. There's even a post from April 2019. FAA provides careers to people with disabilities. The list.
And sending his new press secretary in front of the media to deliver this fable on the color of a pilot's skin.
When you are flying on an airplane with your loved ones, which every one of us in this room has, do you pray that your plane lands safely and gets you to your destination, or do you pray that the pilot has a certain skin color? I think we all know the answer to that question, and as President Trump said yesterday, it's common sense.
But when the cameras turned to him again after the Dow took an absolute nosedive upon learning that Trump's tariffs would be implemented over the weekend, he had this to say on how tariffs will impact Americans, a stark contrast to the tune he was playing during the campaign, and broadening his targets to the European Union.
The European Union has treated us so terribly.
You promised Americans to try to reduce costs, and so many of the products that would be tariffed, when they come into the country, the outgoing country is not paying the tariff. The buyers in the United States pay that, and then that's passed on to consumers in most instances.
Sometimes.
how would you expect to have prices come down if you have such a broad plan for tariffs? And what do you say to the voters who want to see you reduce everyday costs?
Well, let me just tell you that I got elected for a lot of reasons. Number one was the border. Number two was inflation, because I had almost no inflation. And yet I charged hundreds of billions of dollars of tariffs to countries. And think of it, I had almost no inflation, and I took in $600 billion of money from other countries. And tariffs don't cause inflation, they cause success. They cause big success. So we're going to have great success. There could be some temporary short-term disruption, and people will understand that. I had that when I negotiated some of the good deals for the farmers. And unfortunately, those deals have been led astray by Biden and his people because they didn't enforce the deals.
So it is no surprise that leaders of those countries had this to say in response, many echoing the message from Canada that, quote, the world can no longer rely on the United States, especially with this guy at the helm.
We're in a critical moment. As President Trump stated yesterday, he is still committed to placing tariffs on Canada starting as early as tomorrow, possibly. Now, we don't know precisely what that could look like, but I do know two things. First, if the president does choose to implement any tariffs against Canada, we're ready with a response. A purposeful, forceful, but reasonable, immediate response. It's not what we want, but if he moves forward, we will also act.
We are here this morning, my friends, as an unlikely group with leaders from across the political spectrum who've come together with cultural leaders, artists, academics, athletes, labor activists, and indigenous militant activists. We represent the incredible regions of our beautiful country, and we are here for one reason. Our nation, our beloved Canada, is under threat. It is an economic threat, but it's also a threat to our values of decency and inclusion. It's a threat to our sovereignty and our very future as a nation. The threat comes, of course, from the President of the United States, a convicted felon and known predator. He's threatening massive tariffs to try and break us as a people. But the threat is also being driven by the hate algorithms of the oligarchs like Elon Musk. And there is the threat from people in our own country who would sell out our birthright to appease the gangster class from Mar-a-Lago. That is not going to happen.
But can we just spend a couple more seconds on this answer, right? In fact, can we throw to all the times during his campaign that he said as soon as he got in office, he'd make groceries affordable again?
Starting on day one of my new administration, we will end inflation and we will make America affordable again because the prices are too high. The prices are too high. It'll all happen very quickly. This will rapidly drive prices down, lower interest rates, and put more money into the pockets of American consumers. It'll also bring your grocery bill way down. I have more complaints on grocery. The word grocery, it's sort of simple word, but it sort of means like everything you eat. The stomach is speaking. It always does.
I mean, what happened? The same thing that happened to his promise on Ukraine, day one?
Mr. President, when you're back here in Davos next year, will there be then a peace agreement with Ukraine and Russia by then?
Well, you're going to have to ask Russia. Ukraine is ready to make a deal. Just so you understand, this is a war that should have never started. If I were president, it would never have started.
On healthcare, circa 2016. I mean, we know what happens, right? Promises made, bullshit swallowed, people collateral, as they always are. Welcome to the next 4 years.
Don't stay in this position of being so dependent on the United States. As I said, what President Trump has done has let us know that a partner that we've had for many, many years, that we trust, that we rely on, that's like family for us, can no longer be relied on. And I, for one, will not allow British Columbia to stay in a position of being dependent on a partner that we can't count on. Which leads me to our third part of our response, which is diversification. We're going to be working with the federal government, as well as on our own account, to ensure that we're deepening and expanding our trade relationships with other countries around the world. Countries that are also facing tariff threats and other threats from the United States. It gives us all the more reason to work together, to deepen our relationships, and to diversify away from the United States.
Dear President Trump, listen very carefully. Greenland has been part of the Danish kingdom for 800 years. It's an integrated part of our country. It is not for sale. Let me put it in words you might understand. Mr. Trump, fuck off.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the Midas Touch newsletter at MidasTouch.com/newsletter.